titles or hide from the public spotlight. He owes it to the victims to share everything he knows about Epstein's criminal operation and come before the Oversight Committee. Regardless, we will continue to pursue the files and all evidence, no matter how rich and powerful the perpetrators involved. That is a statement from a member of the US House Oversight Committee, which, of course, has been investigating the Jeffrey Epstein case. We'll keep those statements coming throughout the evening, but let's just talk now to India McTaggart, who is royal correspondent for The Telegraph, and I could very happy to say is in the studio with me. Thank you for coming into the studios. And if I can ask you, first of all, did this take you by surprise?
I think it was obviously expected that the clock was ticking on Andrew's living arrangements in the Grace and Favour Royal Lodge. The optics of that were terrible. The palace knew that. There was, of course, the reputational harm that the continued stories and scandal sort of exposed them to. This is a rather unprecedented move, yes. I think that the stripping of all his titles was not expected, and it's a rather firmer hand than I think most in royal circles expected from the king, given that it is his younger brother. But clearly, the scandals had just gotten to such a point that it was untenable for the family to continue, as it was, and even just voluntarily relinquishing them wasn't enough.
One could argue, and I've spoken to a couple of royal commentators this evening who said, well, it would have been better, I guess, if we were always going to come to this point, to have come to it more quickly. I mean, it's taken a long time to get here. A lot of pressure has been put on the royal family. A lot of damage has been done.
You're right, a lot of damage has already been done, but I would just point out that one of the most damning recent developments was that unsurfaced email he sent to Epstein that sort of made clear he misled the public about the timeline of their friendship. And I think at that point, it was just clear, once the public had been misled and it was clear he'd lied, that it was no longer a situation that the royal family could sort of take a bit of a backward step on, and they actually had to really make a change in this way. And the mounting pressure, the mounting media pressure, and I mean, the headlines, the New Statesman cover that we just saw, it all sort of suggests that the public's perception was not going to change and this wasn't going to go away. So this firmer hand was clearly needed. Of course, many people are undoubtedly going to be asking why now, while Andrew, of course, continued to deny all the allegations made against him. It's irrefutable there have been serious and numerous lapses of judgment made on his part. So,
the million-dollar question is, will this move by Buckingham Palace, will it achieve what Buckingham Palace and the royal family hope it will achieve? Will it put to rest this controversy and allow them to move on?
I think it's very difficult to put this, to sort of put a lid on this kind of controversy, because it's now gone on for so many years, and with the Newsnight interview and with all the developments and even the other scandals coming in, the Chinese spy scandal, the posthumous memoir, it's difficult to put the lid back on it. So I don't know if it's going to go away. The King will, of course, hope that this definitive action will make it sort of better in the eyes of the public. And I think, PR-wise, it will. And he has now initiated, as we know, all the proceedings to formally remove his titles. Andrew's only going to be simply known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Yes, of course, they should have acted sooner, and many of the public will agree with that. But at the end of the day, it's very difficult to approach a member of the family. And that's what we need to remember at the end of the day, that it is family. And while they are, of course, a firm as well, that is a difficult balance to maintain.
And, of course, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has a very different ring to it than Prince Andrew. And we do know that Prince Andrew, as he was, enjoyed the trappings of royal life, enjoyed being a royal. This is going to be hugely difficult for him, a proper humiliation for him.
Yes, this will be. We do know that he enjoyed the trappings of royal life and everything that came with it. Obviously, we've been led to understand that Andrew has not objected to any of this process, but to be frank, he doesn't have much of a choice. I mean, his lease, of course, with the Crown Estate in regards to Royal Lodge was very watertight, so he had to be the one to serve his notice. But, will there have been a bit of strong-arming behind the scenes? Very much that's possible. And we know that Prince William's really taken the sort of view that more should have been done about Andrew and sooner. So yes, but this will be extremely sort of damaging for both Andrew and Sarah. And interesting that Sarah's been sort of left to fend for herself, as we understand.
I want to ask you about Prince William, actually. What role has he played, do we know, in any of this? Future king, obviously, he would have had a say, or would he have been kept out of it? This is between two brothers.
He was not kept out of it, no.
Right.
The palace made clear that this was all done in conjunction with Prince William. He was kept abreast of the situation and will undoubtedly have played a role. We know that he has been lobbying behind the scenes for many years for Andrew not to be so public-facing, even at events like the Christmas walk and things like that. So we know that he has taken this view quite some time ago, so he will have definitely been involved.
And tell me a little bit about future royal events, right? Because he may have had the title stripped from him, but he's still a member of the family. And, you know, will he be joining the family at Christmas? Will he be joining the family at various events? Will he be invited, or will he be hidden away from these public events and basically, you know, let's try and forget about him?
I am pretty sure at this point I can say with almost 100% certainty that he will not be making an appearance at family events. That would be pretty unacceptable given the stance they've taken now. It would be contradictory and it wouldn't make sense to the public. So I think he is going to be sort of in a relative royal exile in the undisclosed property on the King's Sandringham estate.
OK, India, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to keep you here in the studio, and I am going to, if I may, cross live now to speak to royal commentator Jenny Bond and author and historian Sir Anthony Selden. Thank you, both of you, for joining us this evening on BBC News. And Jenny, if I can just come to you first, if I may. India was saying there, look, it's the royal titles element of this is pretty surprising, given what we've seen before. Other people, though, saying this is always going to happen and it should have happened sooner. What's your take?
Well, no, I think it's extremely surprising. I must say, I've known King Charles a little bit over the years, and he is not a ruthless man, but by any measure, this is quite a ruthless decision. Clearly, the palace are determined to put a line under all that's happened. And that line, that this censure was deemed necessary, however much Andrew continues to protest his innocence, I mean, that is very telling indeed, isn't it? I think things obviously came to a head when it was proved that Andrew had lied on Newsnight. That was a couple of weeks ago. But then when the king is out and about doing his public work and he gets heckled by the crowd, it was only one man, but it was loud, saying, what did you know about Andrew and when? I mean, this was clearly a problem that was not going to go away. And now, well, in the words of the family of Virginia Giuffre, an ordinary American girl has brought a British prince down.
Well, quite. And do you think, Jenny, that these actions, this surprising action from the palace, is going to put a line underneath this? Is it going to push this problem away, or will this problem continue?
That depends very much on what else comes out from the Epstein emails, which are being trawled through in the United States. By all the indications are that there may be more, but they have done all. I really do think now that the palace have done all they can to draw a line under this. I mean, this is an extraordinary... I've been reporting on the royals for 35 years, and this is the most extraordinary night I can remember. I mean, on a par with almost anything, even including Diana's death, which was obviously tragic and sudden and earth-shattering in so many ways. But this is such a very sordid tale. And however much Andrew protests his innocence, he has sullied his own reputation irreparably, and that damage was beginning to poison the rest of the royal family.
So, Anthony Selden, let me ask you, that poison that Jenny talks about that has started to seep into the royal family, will that now be stopped because of these actions, do you think? Or is this going to continue to follow the royal family around?
Well, I mean, nobody knows. But my sense is that it will make a decisive difference because, I mean, what else can the royal family do? I mean, the accusations are not against the royal family, they are against Andrew. And so there may well be more emails, may well be more sordid, horrible, revolting stories to come out, but they are on Andrew. They're not on the royal family. So I'm sure, look, there are many people who wish the royal family ill, but I think the great majority of people, my sense, will feel that the king, the monarch, has done as much as it could have done. And I agree with Jenny. I mean, it is a massively decisive step. Jenny was reference there, the death of Diana. In some ways, you go back to the abdication, or indeed back to 1917, the last time that princes had their titles stripped from them for misbehaviour. In that case, it was fighting on the German side in the First World War. So we haven't seen something like this for 100 years. It is a huge moment in the royal family, but I think it will be a turning point.
Sandy Selden, tell me this. You talk about a huge turning point for the royal family, but looking ahead, will they now try to distance themselves from Andrew completely? I spoke to India a second ago about royal events, Christmas. Will we now expect Andrew to be persona non grata in any of these situations?
Well, India and others would know, and Jenny would know much more about that than me. But my sense is absolutely, and that he has brought disgrace on the royal family at the very time that the King and Prince William and others are trying to emphasise all that's good in the nation, all that is compassionate, caring, charitable, honourable and decent. You have this appalling mood music off. And the fact that they would want to distance themselves from that seems to be intuitively highly likely. So, yes, and that can then allow the smaller size of the royal family, and let's remember two of them are significantly not well. It will allow them to get on with the important job that they have, not the least at a time of domestic and economic and financial uncertainty in the country. The monarchy at such times performs an important stabilising role, and we need it works best when people look up to the royal family as exemplars of what is best about the nation and what's best about human nature itself. So, I think it's likely, though I don't know, I have no inside knowledge, very likely that the cut will be extremely decisive. Jenny will know much more.
Jenny.
Well, I think that basically... I think that William has been behind this, and I don't know what's going to happen next, but I think that William has been pushing very much for this kind of action to happen. And I also think perhaps the timing of it is partly because William's about to go off to Brazil on a very important tour. He's going to go to the COP meeting, and then he's going to go on to his Earthshot Prize. And the recent visit to the Vatican by the King and Queen was very nearly overshadowed by what was going on with Andrew, and that could not be allowed to continue. So I think this line had to be drawn, and I think William probably was pushing for the King to do so. Though I think the King here has shown just how decisive he can be. It must be very hard to take this kind of action against your brother. I mean, it is a family. It's a monarchy, but it is a family. The two have never been particularly close because there's quite a big age gap. But nevertheless, it's tough to do that. And so he's going to look after his brother. He is financially going to, from his own private funds, let him live on the private Sandringham estate. I don't know why he should do that, quite frankly. I mean, Andrew's a grown-up, as far as I can see. He's perfectly grown up. He must have money, could manage on his own. But Charles has offered that hand of brotherly friendship to him.
It's interesting that you talk about William and his influence, Jenny. So do you think without William's influence on the King, we would have got to this point?
I don't know, but I do believe that William has been extremely angered by the damage done to the monarchy. If you're born into this position, which William, some might think, unfortunately has been, and certainly William thought so when he was younger, but he has grasped his destiny with both hands now, and he's trying to do some good in the world, and he's trying to change the monarchy, as he said, for the better, and then to have that all thrown in your face by your uncle is very dispiriting, I'm sure. So I think he wanted decisive action, and he didn't want it to go on any longer, and he certainly didn't want it to drag on until he becomes king, and then he'd have to deal with it.
Jenny, can I ask you about the princesses, Beatrice and Eugenie? What next for them?
Well, torn loyalties, obviously, but the palace has leant over backwards to say that they are still very welcome at family gatherings. They still have their titles, and they're an integral part of the family. But, I mean, you know, put yourself in their position. Where do you go for Christmas? You know, do you go with your mum and dad, or do you go with the rest of the family, the wider family? It's going to be very difficult for them, but they are a tight-knit family. And so I've no doubt that Beatrice and Eugenie will stand by their parents wherever they both end up. And it does seem they may end up in separate accommodation, which surprises me, I have to say.
Jenny Bond, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening. I'm going to let Jenny Bond go. I'm going to thank you once again, Jenny, for joining us and for your insights. I just want to update you on the story so far. This is what you need to know this hour. Prince Andrew has officially been stripped of his prince title after weeks and weeks of intense scrutiny. His links to Jeffrey Epstein have come under the spotlight, and pressure has been mounting on the royal family. So, a few hours ago, Buckingham Palace issued a statement in which it confirmed that he will no longer be known as Prince and that he will be leaving Windsor Lodge, Royal Lodge in Windsor, his house of residence for many, many decades. We, of course, will be continuing coverage of this breaking news story here on BBC News. But now it's time to say goodbye to our viewers on PBS who are watching us on the PBS News channel. Sir Anthony Selden, author and historian, is still with me, I'm very happy to say. And Sir Anthony, let me ask you this. Obviously, you are a historian. You've been, studying the royal family for so many years. Jenny likened the events of this evening in terms of their cataclysmic impact to the death of Princess Diana, to other events which have shaken the royal family at its core. Do you see it that way too?
Well, I'm not certain that is such an accurate analogy, because that was a tragic death over which no one could have any authorship. This is a deliberate series of actions against strong advice by the king's brother. And I see this in some similarities with the abdication in 1936, where the then King Edward VIII gave up the crown to be with the woman he loved, and he voluntarily gave it up. There was no apparent voluntariness, although there were many opportunities for Andrew to say that he was going to go, at least until, as he says, clear his name, which he believes to be innocent. But the damage that he was doing was enormous. And we have to go back to 1917, when the title of prince was stripped off various people because they had been fighting on the side of the enemy in the First World War, the Germans. So this is, I think, without any doubt, an event of enormous significance for the royal family. It has seen a very decisive action from the King and from Prince William. Now, exactly what was the balance of views there, it's impossible to say, but both of them clearly needed to be involved in this decision, that the ongoing, repeated bad noise from Andrew at a time that both of them are working so hard to create absolutely the different image of the royal family as a servant of the nation, supporting good deeds, compassion, charity, those people who are doing their best to provide and care for other people, creating this sense of the monarchy as the exemplar of the nation at its best. This was grotesque when there was all this constant noise from Andrew going on. So very strong, very effective action, the like of which hasn't been seen, I think, for 100 years from the royal family. And will it put an end to it? I don't know. But the allegations, if they continue, will be made against Andrew, not against the royal family. And my sense is that some people will obviously want to continue to be blaming the royal family. You know, they could have acted later, they could have done earlier, rather, they could have done different things. But my sense is this will take a lot of the pressure off and allow the smaller numbers of active royals who are affected by ill health, 2 of them, to get on with their job and to do their best for the country, unaffected by this constant and appalling stream of bad news coming from Prince Andrew.
OK, well, Sir Anthony Selden, it's been really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for bringing us that historical context as well to the events of this evening.
Thank you.
Let's, if we can, cross live to Ailsa Anderson, who was formerly Queen Elizabeth II's press secretary. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. And can I just ask you for your insight, your opinion as to how you think this has been handled by the royal family so far?
Well, of course, this story, as you know, has been going on for 15 years. You know, it's bad enough if a bad news story goes on for a week or 2 weeks, but 15 years in the making is quite extraordinary. I certainly have never known a story like that in my lifetime. So to culminate in the which Andrew, as he's not Prince Andrew anymore, so Andrew will see as utter humiliation, is, it's absolutely earth-shattering for him, and I think for all the people around him.
Do you think it's been handled well over the past 15 years?
I think the King has clearly taken action. He had to get all his ducks in the row in the last week to make sure the legal implications were all ready. So he almost set it in stone a week ago when Andrew announced he wasn't going to use his titles, and now we've gone a step further and those titles are going to be stripped from him legally, and he will be moving out of Royal Lodge. Do we think he'll ever be rehabilitated? I can't see this happening. I really can't.
How do you think Andrew feels right now, knowing him as you do? What do you think he's thinking? Is he going to be extremely upset and hurt? It's been said that he accepted the King's decision, but one wonders...
Well, did he accept it, or did he have no objections?
Well, quite.
I think the statement was quite nuanced and quite cleverly so by the royal household. I would think he feels humiliated. You know, he has been a prince of the realm for 65 years, and to end that in such a humiliating way, must weigh heavily on him and his family as well, especially his daughters, who have played no wrongdoing in this drama, in this scenario. Golly, how will they be feeling at the moment?
Absolutely, yes, and they of course retain their titles of Princess Beatrice and Eugenie. Going back to the King and how he has come to this decision, just speaking to Sir Anthony and Jenny Bond earlier, Jenny was absolutely adamant that without Prince William's influence, this decision may have not happened in the way that it did.
I slightly disagree with Jenny, I'm afraid. I feel, and from people that I've spoken to, that the King has actually driven this. And I know it's his brother, but the King has acted as monarch, as the head of state, and he has taken divisive action on this. Yes, absolutely, he has had the backing of Prince William, but I think this has been driven by King Charles.
And how do you think, going forward, Andrew's relationship with the royal family will progress? I mean, in public, obviously, we're expecting him not to be seen on balconies at Christmas, etc. But will there still be a relationship maintained behind the scenes, do you think? Is he close to the King anyway? Will that kind of, relationship keep going?
Well, One would hope so. There is a huge age gap between the two brothers, and the king is our constitutional monarch. But they are still brothers. If I had a crystal ball, I would love to give you the right answer. I don't. But we'll just have to see. And I think, if there are going to be big events that will bring the brothers together privately, then they may be some sort of reconciliation. And maybe, if Andrew shows a bit of sympathy, a bit of, an apologetic nature, a bit of mea culpa. Yes, I maybe didn't choose the best judgment or the best friends. Maybe that would go towards starting to build the relationship up again.
And you, of course, were formerly Queen Elizabeth II's press secretary. I'm assuming absolutely this would never have happened under her reign.
Again, I just don't know. It never got to this point during her reign, so I think it'd be wrong of me to speculate about what a decision she would have made, because it wasn't. We're in a whole different place, in 2025 compared to when she was here.
OK, well, Elle Sanderson, it's been very good to talk to you. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us.
Thank you.
So here is how the news of Andrew's loss of royal titles was broken to the audience of BBC Question Time, and the reaction. Have a listen.
I'm stopping the recording because you have a breaking story which we should respond to. That's why I stopped you, Matt, okay. So forgive me. So, Prince Andrew. The King has initiated a process, so we're going to discuss this. Prince Andrew will no longer be Prince Andrew. He will be Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He will surrender the lease to his home, and he will find alternative private accommodation. Lisa, your response?
Well, I mean, obviously, this is a huge development and a big step for the King to take. I have to say, just, as an initial response, I really support the step that he's taken. I think it sends a very powerful message to the victims of grooming and sex offences. I used to work with children who'd been abused before I came into Parliament, including many of the girls who'd been horrifically abused by grooming gangs. I read some of the testimony from some of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, not just at the time, but recently with news stories that have come to light. And I think, given the new information that we have, I think this is a really brave, important and right step by the King, and I fully support it.
Well, with me now is India McTaggart, royal correspondent for The Telegraph, who's been here for a short while, and the Daily Mail's Robert Hardman, author of Charles III. Robert, very nice to see you too. Thank you for coming into the BBC studios this evening. And if I can just ask you, first of all, for your reaction to this news. Jenny Bond said she was absolutely shocked and surprised. What about you? I am surprised. I'm surprised by not where we've got to, but by the speed of it and the severity of it. I mean, I did expect Prince Andrew, now Mr. Mountbatten Windsor, to be turfed out of Royal Lodge. I could see that coming. But I think the fact that the King has actively taken away all his titles and his honours, that's remarkable. I mean, A, it requires a sort of new kind of constitutional process to do that. But B, the last person to be de-princed was the Duke of Cumberland, who was fighting against his country in the First World War. The last person to have the Order of the Garter removed from them was Emperor Hirohito in the Second World War. They were traitors. Now, whatever you say about Andrew, he served his country in war, he fought for his country. So to have those taken away, I mean, that's a really serious move. So, I mean, I think the King has been, robust is one way of putting it. I mean, this is very tough. What happened, Robert, from that time when we heard about Prince Andrew or Andrew no longer be able to use his titles, the Duke of York, but still having those titles, to everything being stripped. What changed in those few weeks?
I don't think that much changed. I think that was a stopgap position. I think that the turning point came a couple of weeks ago. The story in the Mail on Sunday where it was shown that basically Andrew had lied about saying he'd severed all contact with Jeffrey Epstein in 2010. And out came this email showing that they were on very friendly terms the following year. That was a game changer, and from that, everything else has followed, I think.
India, let me bring you in here because I can see you nodding quite a lot to what Robert's saying.
Robert, yes.
You agree with what he's saying. It's perfectly fine to agree with Robert.
Yes.
Do you also think that that was a bit of a stopgap, that announcement? Because I just want to understand the kind of process to get to this point.
Well, we know there were sort of fraught negotiations happening behind the scenes, and we know, as Robert said, that the clock was ticking on the Royal Lodge issue. But the severity of the actions tonight and the decisiveness was not expected. And I think that is the common consensus, that we didn't think the monarch would show quite so firm a hand in regards to this issue. But I think one point to make, which actually Jenny made earlier and so did Sir Anthony, it's the stabilising role of the monarchy was sort of under threat in a way, because this issue just wasn't going away. And actually, if you see on a human level the good that they do on the ground when you're on the engagements with them, as Robert has been as well many times, when you see them in the room as they're sort of comforting a grieving mother, or the softer diplomatic power that they have, for example, in Trump's recent state visit, all of these things are so incredible and so unique to the British royal family, but it was being overshadowed by this scandal and by the constant sort of drip, drip, drip leak of the Epstein files and all the sort of peripheral scandals going around with it, so as well as Virginia Giuffre's posthumous memoir. So I think, yes, while we knew the clock was ticking and sort of the living arrangements were under threat and not really tenable, we didn't know that such decisive action would be taken.
And that whole kind of move towards taking these titles away, it would have had an impact on King Charles, I'm sure. Yeah. He's not someone who would enjoy having to do this. But the action, as India said, was decisive. Do you think that William had as much influence as Royal Commentator Jenny Bond was talking to me about earlier, or do you think this is all King Charles?
I'm with Ailsa, who was on earlier, and others. I think, I mean, William was clearly consulted in the same way the Prime Minister was consulted. But on a thing like this, actually, this is for number one. This is what monarchs do. I mean, taking away titles, taking away honours, that wouldn't be a sort of committee decision. And I think the King, let's not forget, he'd been trying to get the Duke of York, as was, out of that house for some time. I mean, when I was writing my book last year, I discovered that they'd had a showdown, and the King had basically said, I'm taking away your allowance, I'm not paying the security bills on that anymore. You've got a perfectly good alternative accommodation available, take it, otherwise you're on your own. And Andrew said, no, I'm going to stay at Royal Lodge. So he had his chance, and he blew it. And now he really is discovering what a mistake that was. And he's off the plot. He's out of Windsor. I mean, you know, he's moving up to Norfolk because clearly, I think the King again wisely realises that were he to have some sort of property on the Crown Estate property like Frogmore Cottage, there would still be a legitimate grievance. People could say, well, that technically belongs to the country because it belongs to the Crown Estate. Sandringham is entirely private. So up there, that's, you know, it might be Norfolk, might as well be Siberia.
So no taxpayers' money?
None at all.
Being spent on Andrew?
No, the King will foot all the bills.
But he will no longer be within those royal circles at all?
Well, I mean, you know, there'll be family moments, private family moments, which I suspect, I mean, India will have a better idea, but I mean, you know, you can't stop someone from attending, you know, family weddings and funerals and things to which they've been invited. We will certainly never see him on the balcony again at Buckingham Palace, I'm sure of that. I don't think we'll see him even at, he used to love turning up at things like the Garter lunch in June. That's not going to happen. We won't see him at Royal Ascot. One of the few times he was allowed, as it were, to mingle in public with the family was at Easter at St George's Chapel. I think that's off now. I think it's a very, very bleak. It's sort of unprecedented, this.
And this will hit Andrew hard.
Oh, I mean,
as someone who enjoyed the lifestyle of a royal.
Well, also someone. I mean, he took these things very seriously. I mean, didn't he? I mean, he always liked to have. It was always the Duke of York KG on all his stationery. I mean, he was a great one for the use of titles. He used to get very cross if people, even when somebody just referred to the Queen Mother, he got very cross and said, "Don't you know it's Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother?" He stood on the ceremony and. It is, I think, a rather, stark illustration of the old adage, be nice to people on the way up because you'll need them on the way down. And doesn't look like there's anyone there on his way down.
Is there anyone there on the way down?
Well, I mean, we understand, as Robert pointed out, that the King is going to foot his private bills and sort of the property sense. And Sarah Ferguson, I don't know if there's anyone on the way down. I think that might be a different story, although she may yet still choose to live with him. We're not completely sure. I think the palace understands they're not going to, but that may change. Of course, they have the 2 children that they share who are not culpable in any of this.
Absolutely not, but they are still his daughters. Will that be a push and a pull for them, do you think? Are we seen with Daddy in public or are we not seen with him? I mean, he's their father. This is awfully awkward for them.
Oh, it's a terrible situation to be in. And of course, one can't know unless you're in it, how you deal with it. I do think, William's quite fond of them and sometimes pulls them into various engagements. Very rarely, but it happens. And I think that sort of the understanding is they will still be able to do that. They're, of course, still going to be able to retain their title of princesses. So I'm not sure much will change for them on the front of being part of the royal family. But, of course, we don't know what will happen in private with the family. I'm sure they won't sort of...
He is a grandfather. He's a very proud grandfather. He's self-evidently got an awful lot of time on his hands. So I think, that bond won't change. This has been going on for 15 years now. Since the whole sort of Epstein saga really became toxic. So they have grown used to this sort of this taint, and they do retain their titles. As India says, Prince William is very fond of them. Everyone, the royal family, are very fond of them. I think there's a real feeling that they've been through an awful lot and have emerged, very level-headed, and they've got young families. They don't have any sort of official role, so I think that stays the same. The question is, over the Duchess, that is more interesting. Where is she going to live? I suspect.
Well, not with Andrew.
Could move. I mean, that'll be down to them. I mean, we don't know what property he's going to be allocated on the Sandringham estate, how big it is. But she's stayed very loyal to him. I can't imagine. They at a time like this, they need each other.
You obviously know the King's personality. Was he close to Andrew in general, growing up? And there's a big age gap.
There is a big age gap. I mean, obviously, King born 1948, Andrew born 1960. I mean, they were not quite a generation apart, but it was very much sort of Queen's second family, as people often put it. He was, he was a very sort of, fond elder brother. He at royal weddings, there he'd be. I mean, they're not great buddies, but I mean, let's not forget that in the early days when it was sort of Charles and Diana, very soon after that it was Andrew and Fergie. It was in fact the late Diana, Princess of Wales, who basically introduced Prince Andrew as was to Sarah Ferguson. So they go back a long way. But I think the King, like his late mother, they know when you're monarch, you have to compartmentalize. There's family and there's the institution, and the institution comes first. And I think the King was exasperated that Andrew was rejecting a more, I would say, now looks like a much better deal for him a year ago. He turned that down, and now he's paying the price for that.
It's true, and we of course had murmurings over the weekend that Sarah Ferguson wanted to move into Adelaide Cottage, thank you, the cottage that the Prince and Princess of Wales are moving out of. Hopefully, well, they say sort of before bonfire night, that's the aim. and that Andrew would move into Frogmore Cottage, which was the previous home of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. So it's interesting. We all sort of expected that they would stay in Windsor, in the Windsor estate, whereas now the Sandringham move, I wonder, and there were sort of the suggestions last weekend that it was sort of as William prepares, you know, for greater seniority in his role, he didn't really want to be near Andrew in that way. So I wonder if you think that there was any sort of validity or truth in that.
Well, I'm sure that you know, as I said, William would be consulted, but I think really what it boiled down to was the fact that, and by the way, that suggestion that the Duchess might be given Adelaide Cottage, that to me looked like her negotiators sort of putting that out there as a sort of bargaining ploy, so that it was discussed. But I don't think there was any question of the king kicking him out of one property and then giving them two. I think by as I said, going to Sandringham, it's a very clear move that there is the Crown Estate aren't involved. There's no sort of residual link, if you like, to the Treasury, the taxpayer, public funding. He's basically moving into an estate property on a private estate.
We have a very short amount of time, so just briefly, is this damage irreparable, or can the royal family move forward from this?
I think in terms of the working royal family, they can move forward, and we need to focus on the good that they do. But we have still Epstein file drip, drip, drip yet to come. So,
and Robert, what's your take?
Yeah, the monarchy carries on. I mean, they've chopped off a limb, but the monarchy proper, on it goes.
Okay. Robert and India, thank you very much to both of you for joining me. I'm ever so grateful to both of you for your insights. So let's just sum up what we know so far this evening. A few hours ago, Buckingham Palace issued a statement in which it confirmed that Prince Andrew will no longer keep the title of Prince. The title of Prince will be stripped from him, and he will be known henceforth as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. We've also heard that Royal Lodge, which of course is the place that he has called home for decades, will now be taken from him too, and Andrew will live in the Sandringham estate of the King in Norfolk. The news came through a statement from Buckingham Palace. The formal notice, it said, the formal notice has now been served to surrender the lease on Royal Lodge. This, of course, is a moment that the royal family had hoped to avoid after many, many years of controversy and pressure with regards to the relationship of Andrew with the dead convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. And the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein have tonight commented and given statements where they see this as a victory for the survivors of the dead convicted paedophile. So just to reiterate, an historic moment for the royal family as a prince is stripped of his titles and of his home by his brother, the King, King Charles III. Well, here is some of that Newsnight interview with Prince Andrew in 2019, where he denied ever having any sexual contact with his accuser, Virginia Giuffre.
July of this year, Epstein was arrested on charges of sex trafficking and abusing dozens of underage girls. One of Epstein's accusers, Virginia Roberts, has made allegations against you. She says she met you in 2001. She says she dined with you, danced with you at Tramp nightclub in London. She went on to have sex with you in a house in Belgravia belonging to Ghislaine Maxwell, your friend. Your response?
I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady. None whatsoever.
You don't remember meeting her?
No.
She says she met you in 2001. She dined with you. She danced with you. You bought her drinks. You were in Tramp nightclub in London. And she went on to have sex with you in a house in Belgravia belonging to Ghislaine Maxwell.
Didn't happen.
Do you remember her?
No. I have no recollection of ever meeting her. I'm almost, in fact, I'm convinced that I was never in tramps with her. There are a number of things that are wrong with that story. One of which is that I don't know where the bar is in tramps. I don't drink. I don't think I've ever bought a drink in tramps whenever I was there.
Do you remember dancing at Tramp?
No. That couldn't have happened because the date that is being suggested, I was at home with the children.
You know that you were at home with the children. Was it a memorable night?
On that particular day that we now understand is the date, which is the 10th of March, I was at home. I was with the children. I'd taken Beatrice to a Pizza Express in Woking for a party at I suppose sort of 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And then because the Duchess was away, we have a simple rule in the family that when one's away, the other one's there. I was on terminal leave at the time from the Royal Navy, so therefore I was at home.
Why would you remember that so specifically? Why would you remember a Pizza Express birthday and being at home? Because
going to Pizza Express in Woking is an unusual thing for me to do. A very unusual thing for me to do. I've only been to Woking a couple of times, and I remember it weirdly distinctly. But as soon as somebody reminded me of it, I went, oh yes, I remember that. But I have no recollection of ever meeting or being in the company or the presence.
So you're absolutely sure that you're at home on the 10th of March?
Yeah.
She was very specific about that night. She described dancing with you and you profusely sweating and that she went on to have bath, possibly...
There's a slight problem with the sweating because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time, and that was... Oh, actually, yes. I didn't sweat at the time because I had suffered what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War when I was shot at. And I simply, it was almost impossible for me to sweat. And it's only because I have done a number of things in the recent past that I'm starting to be able to do that again. So I'm afraid to say that there's a medical condition that says that I didn't do it, so therefore...
Is it possible that you met Virginia Roberts, dined with her, danced with her in Tramp, had sex with her on another date?
No.
Do you remember meeting her at all?
No.
Do you know you didn't meet her, or do you just not remember meeting her?
No, I don't know if I've met her. But no, I have no recollection of meeting her.
Because she was very specific. She described the dance that you had together in Tramp. She described meeting you. She was a 17-year-old girl meeting a senior member of the royal family.
Never happened.
She provided a photo of the two of you together.
Yes.
Your arm was around her waist.
Yes.
You've seen the photo?
I've seen the photograph.
How do you explain that?
I can't. Because I have absolutely no memory of that photograph ever being taken.
Do you recognise yourself in the photo?
Yeah, it's pretty difficult not to recognise yourself.
Your friend suggested that the photo is fake.
I think it's, from the investigations that we've done, you can't prove whether or not that photograph is faked or not, because it is a photograph of a photograph of a photograph. So it's very difficult to be able to prove it. But I don't remember that photograph ever being taken.
But it's possible that it was you with your arm around
that's
her
me, but whether that's my hand or whether that's the position, but I have simply no recollection of a photograph ever being taken.
The world has now seen the photo that Virginia Roberts provided, taken by Epstein, we understand, in Ghislaine Maxwell's house.
Well, here's the problem. I've never seen Epstein with a camera in my life.
I think it was Virginia Roberts' camera. She said a little Kodak one that she lent to Epstein. He took a photo, and your arm is round her waist.
I don't remember that photograph ever being taken. I don't remember going upstairs in the house, because that photograph is taken upstairs. and I'm not entirely convinced that, I mean, that is what I would describe as me in that picture. But we can't be certain as to whether or not that's my hand on her, whatever it is, left side.
You think that...
Because I have no recollection of that photograph ever being taken. So
why would somebody have put in another hand? You think it is you next to her in the photo?
Oh, it's definitely me. I mean, that's a picture of me. It's not a picture of... I don't believe it's a picture of me in London, because when I go out in London, I wear a suit and a tie. That's what I would describe as those are my travelling clothes if I'm going overseas. So I've got plenty of photographs of me dressed in those sorts of sort of kit, but not there.
Just to clarify, so you think that photo has been faked?
Nobody can prove whether or not that photograph has been doctored, but I don't recollect that photograph ever being taken.
And you don't recollect having your hand round her waist in Ghislaine Maxwell's house on any occasion, even if it was a different date?
I'm terribly sorry, but if I, as a member of the royal family, and I have a photograph taken, and I take very, very few photographs, I am not one to, as it were, hug, and public displays of affection are not something that I do. So that's the best explanation I can give you. And I'm afraid to say that I don't believe that photograph was taken in the way that has been suggested.
Hello, I'm Mark Lowe and welcome to our continuing special coverage of the major developments concerning Prince Andrew. Buckingham Palace has announced that Prince Andrew will lose his titles and move out of Royal Lodge. Andrew is understood not to have objected to the King's decision. We will have more analysis across the hour, but first let us just go through that statement in full. His Majesty has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles and honours of Prince Andrew, it reads. Prince Andrew will now be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. His lease on Royal Lodge has to date provided him with legal protection to continue in residence. Formal notice has now been served to surrender the lease and he will move to alternative private accommodation. These censures are deemed necessary, notwithstanding the fact that he continues to deny the allegations against him. And the statement ends, Their Majesties wish to make clear that their thoughts and utmost sympathies have been and will remain with the victims and survivors of any and all forms of abuse. Andrew gave up his other royal titles earlier this month, including the Duke of York, after more questions about his private life. There has been, of course, increased focus on the Prince over his links with the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The Prince has always denied any wrongdoings. In a posthumous memoir, Virginia Giuffre repeated allegations that as a teenager she had sex with Prince Andrew on 3 separate occasions. Andrew has always denied the claims. Also this month, emails from 2011 re-emerged showing Andrew in contact with Jeffrey Epstein months after he claimed their friendship ended. Let us bring in our first guest this half hour. We can speak to Sarah Gristwood, who is a royal historian. Sarah, thanks very much indeed for your time with us this evening. Your thoughts this evening on the fact that the pressure in the end seemed too much. Was there an inevitability that we would get to this moment?
Well, let's be clear, this is the moment the royals, the palace, hoped would never happen. They absolutely wanted it to go away more quietly than this. For Andrew, no longer Prince Andrew, to withdraw into private life, and for the public, the press, to cease comments. But that has not happened. This is an extraordinary moment. They've been forced to act, and let's be glad that at least they now have.
An extraordinary moment, Sarah, as you say, and a huge decision for the King, of course, one which was one would imagine, personal, political and constitutional.
Yes, all of the above. Let's not forget the personal element, that Andrew was brought up as his younger brother, and perhaps even more pressingly, was a very beloved son of Elizabeth II. So that can only have affected the response of individual royals to this crisis. But in the end, it's always the firm first, the family second. It has to be, and that's what we're seeing now.
And do you think that the fact you say the firm first, a reference there, of course, to how the royal family is well, a nickname, if you like, an inner nickname for the royal family, was it down to the fact that the firm was, in effect, being brought down by Andrew, this kind of rising unpopularity, I suppose, or falling popularity, I should say, of the royal family, polls showing that, you know, that the monarchy itself was taking a hit over all of this, and so that, in a sense, forced the king to intervene?
Yes, exactly that. We've seen the king even heckled about the continued presence of Prince Andrew within royal circles. I think the royal family, the palace, would absolutely have rather this had gone away quietly. But since it wasn't, they had to act. And now they have.
Just put this in a bit of historical context for us, Sarah, because, of course, highly unusual for a prince to lose a royal title. And I suppose we have to go back to Edward VIII abdicating in 1936 for such a rapid, visible downgrade of such a senior royal.
Well, indeed, but even then it didn't go quite this far. As you say, Edward VIII abdicated, proclaiming that it was his own decision, became the Duke of Windsor, but to actually be stripped of royal title, well, First World War days, those of Queen Victoria's grandchildren who had, because they were married into the German royals, fought on the other side, were stripped of their titles. Before that, I think we're right back to Henry VIII declaring his various children illegitimate. This is extraordinary. It's pretty close to unprecedented, and I think it shows just how seriously this is being taken in royal circles.
Just explain for us, Sarah, why Andrew's daughters retain their royal titles.
Well, the very obscure rules of the royal descent allow for the children of the son of a monarch, which of course Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie are, to be called princess. They still are. The fact of their father's disgrace does not actually affect that. Quite what role they'll play in royal circles and royal events remains to be seen, but the actual princesship, if you like, is not affected by what happens to their parents.
And we've spoken a lot about the King's role in all of this, but it is thought that Prince William too, of course, the heir, will have made his views on Andrew very, very clear.
Yes, I think that's highly likely. And of course, he'll have a bit less emotional weight behind it. King Charles is bound to remember that Andrew was his mother's beloved son. For Prince William, that's a bit less pressing. And we already know that Prince William has views about a future, a slimmed-down monarchy, and is prepared to be fairly, really ruthless in the pursuit of that.
Royal historian Sarah Gristwood, thank you so much for your thoughts and insights this evening here on BBC News.
Thank you.
Well, here's how the news of Andrew's loss of royal titles was broken to the audience of BBC Question Time, and the reaction.
I'm stopping the recording because you have a breaking story which we should respond to. That's why I stopped you, Matt, so forgive me. So, Prince Andrew. The King has initiated a process, so we're going to discuss this. Prince Andrew will no longer be Prince Andrew. He will be Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He will surrender the lease to his home, and he will find alternative private accommodation. Lisa, your response?
Well, I mean, obviously, this is a huge development and a big step for the King to take. I have to say, just, you know, as an initial response, I really support the step that he's taken. I think it sends a very powerful message to the victims of grooming and sex offences. I used to work with children who'd been abused before I came into Parliament, including many of the girls who'd been horrifically abused by grooming gangs. I read some of the testimony from some of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, not just at the time, but recently with news stories that have come to light. And I think, you know, given the new information that we have, I think this is a really brave, important and right step by the King, and I fully support it.
Reaction there on the BBC's Question Time. Well, speaking to BBC News a short time ago, royal commentator Jenny Bond called the news the most extraordinary she can recall in the past 25 years.
I really do think now that the palace have done all they can to draw a line under this. I mean, this is an extraordinary... I've been reporting on the royals for 35 years, and this is the most extraordinary night I can remember. I mean, on a par with almost anything, even including Diana's death, which was obviously tragic and sudden and earth-shattering in so many ways. But this is such a very sordid tale. And however much Andrew protests his innocence, he has sullied his own reputation irreparably, and that damage was beginning to poison the rest of the royal family.
Royal commentator Jenny Bond there. Well, here is some of that Newsnight interview with Prince Andrew in 2019, in which he denied ever having any sexual contact with his accuser, Virginia Giuffre.
So you're absolutely sure that you're at home on the 10th of March?
Yeah.
She was very specific about that night. She described dancing with you and you profusely sweating, and that she went on to have bath, possibly...
There's a slight problem with the sweating, because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time, and that was... Oh, actually, yes. I didn't sweat at the time because I had suffered what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War when I was shot at, and I simply it was almost impossible for me to sweat, and it's only because I have done a number of things in the recent past that I'm starting to be able to do that again. So I'm afraid to say that there's a medical condition that says that I didn't do it, so therefore.
The now infamous interview with BBC Newsnight there from 2019. Well, our correspondent Helena Wilkinson is in Windsor for us tonight. Helena, just give us a sense of the mood there and comings and goings on the Windsor estate, one which Andrew will now have to move out of.
Yes, let me just give you, just describe where we are. So the gate you can see just behind us, that leads into Windsor Great Park. And then beyond that, about half a mile or so away, there is a further gate. And also then that leads to Royal Lodge. This is an area, the Windsor Great Park, of course, where members of the public, anyone can walk through. But there is that further gate which stops anyone from going into the grounds, obviously, of Royal Lodge. It's been pretty busy here all day, but that's nothing unusual with cars coming and going. Tonight, though, it's the kind of dramatic news that we received from the palace this evening, firstly about Prince Andrew having those titles are going to be formally taken away from him. He will no longer be a prince, and also that he will move out of Royal Lodge. This is where he has lived for more than 20 years. He lives with his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, and it will likely be deeply humiliating for him. Now, we know that Prince Andrew will be moving to the Sandringham estate. That is privately owned by the King. We don't yet know whereabouts on the estate, but he will move out of Royal Lodge, we understand, as soon as possible, and completely out of Windsor, where he has spent the majority of his life. We have been getting a little bit of reaction at a pub not too far away from here. Talking to some locals, we're told that the pub was actually opened by Andrew and Sarah Ferguson a number of years ago. One person said to us that we told them the news, and they said in reaction, it's a long time coming. Another person said, he deserves it, I can't even look at him. So around this area, and of course further beyond, about 3 miles away, where Windsor Castle is and the town itself, they are well used to big royal stories. Tonight, another one, another dramatic moment in the Prince Andrew story, where he, as I say, has been stripped of his titles. A decision by the King. He has initiated that formal process for him to be stripped of his titles and honours, and also those negotiations that won't have been easy to get Prince Andrew to move out of Royal Lodge, which, as I say, is not too far from where we are this evening.
Yeah, and Helena, you talk about the negotiations that won't have been easy. I mean, not least actually over the legal complexities of the lease, which I understand runs for many decades to come, and kind of questions over whether he would have been compensated, or whether he would be compensated financially for moving out, given the kind of upfront renovations that he made. Just clarify that for us, if you can.
Yeah, so he signed the lease agreement for the Royal Lodge. It's a 30-room property within the grounds of Windsor Great Park. It's about 3 miles, as I say, from Windsor Castle. That lease agreement was published or put into the public domain after request. The BBC saw a copy of it. Now, he paid a lot of money up front for the lease, but also for refurbishments on the property, and what that meant was that he didn't pay, or he paid at what's called a peppercorn rate in the years that he has lived there. So legally he considered a watertight lease, so legally he didn't have to move out of that property, but clearly the palace has been well aware of the optics of all of this, that Prince Andrew living in such a vast, sprawling mansion, when there are questions about his living arrangements, the continued allegations that continue to emerge about Prince Andrew, the optics of that, the palace will have been acutely aware of it. So negotiations to get him to move out, I suspect he didn't really have much choice. It would have been the King who would have been making that decision, but he will be moving at some stage as soon as possible, we understand. And in terms of his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, who's also been living with him at the property, she, we understand, will have to make or be making her own arrangements, her own living arrangements.
Right, so I was going to ask you about that. So we think that she will not be living with him. You mentioned Sandringham there, the royal estate where the King would pay, we understand, for Andrew's new private accommodation, but that would not be with Sarah Ferguson by his side.
That's what we understand. So they've lived here together for a number of years. They obviously got divorced a number of years ago, but Sarah Ferguson and Prince Andrew, again, no longer a prince, no longer has that title. They have been living at Royal Lodge together. But as we understand it, Sarah Ferguson is going to be making her own living arrangements. That is all we know at this stage, and that Prince Andrew will be moving onto the Sandringham estate at some point.
And Helena, a huge humiliation, of course, for Andrew, unprecedented fall from grace in that way, but also a hugely difficult decision for the King, given all the pressure that has mounted clearly in recent weeks and months. Just give us a sense of the thinking of whether the Buckingham Palace will be hoping that this will allow them somehow to move on.
Yes, if you look back a couple of weeks ago, we had that statement via Buckingham Palace. Prince Andrew put out a statement a few weeks ago saying that he was voluntarily going to be giving up his titles and the honours conferred upon him because of the continued allegations, which he said he vigorously denied. But because of that and because of the impact on the King and the work of the royal family, he was going to do that voluntarily. There was a hope, I think, that would have drawn some line under things, but over the past week it's intensified matters, and we've seen not only Prince Andrew's living arrangements under intense scrutiny, but also the posthumous memoir by Virginia Giuffre, who is the most prominent accuser of the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. There were more allegations emerged in the papers, but also in her posthumous memoir as well. It will have been tricky for the palace, but also it will have been tricky personally for the King as well. His younger brother stripping him of the title prince, which he has had since birth. That will not have been easy. So difficult discussions will have been had, but the palace and the royal family, this is a very personal family crisis for them. It's caused significant reputational damage to the royal family, and also it's been obviously played out in public. So clearly the King has felt that something further has needed to be done.
Helena Wilkinson outside Royal Lodge on the Windsor estate. Thank you so much for now. Let me just bring you one more reaction coming to us from an associate attorney who has personally represented 9 victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Mary Fitil-Chian, speaking to the BBC World Service. Because we talked there a lot about the impact and damage on the royal family, but we obviously need to talk also about the impact felt by the Giuffre family. And this associate attorney says, I think Virginia's candid and honest testimony really highlighting the nuances and the intricacies of how women are victimised. This should have happened years ago. This is certainly a step in the right direction towards accountability. I think this will be very welcome news for them tonight. Our royal correspondent Sarah Campbell looks back at how Andrew was caught up in the Jeffrey Epstein scandal and how it has brought down the curtain on his royal life.
He was the dashing prince who returned from the Falklands a war hero. He met and married Sarah Ferguson, and on their wedding day they became the Duke and Duchess of York.
This way, please.
Family and fatherhood followed, but it was his friendships which proved his undoing. Earlier this month, he attempted to draw a line under the controversies which have dogged him for years, announcing that, in discussion with the King and my immediate and wider family, we've concluded the continued accusations about me distract from the work of His Majesty and the royal family. I've decided, as I always have, to put my duty to my family and country first. I stand by my decision 5 years ago to stand back from public life. With His Majesty's agreement, we feel I must now go a step further. I will therefore no longer use my title or the honours which have been conferred upon me. As I've said previously, I vigorously deny the accusations against me. Those accusations primarily stem from his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced financier and paedophile. The woman who accused Epstein of trafficking her for sex, Virginia Giuffre, also accused Prince Andrew of having sex with her 3 times when she was a teenager and produced this photo, taken, she said, when she was 17. Andrew denied the accusations, but elicited little public sympathy when interviewed by Newsnight in 2019.
You can say categorically that you don't recall meeting Virginia Roberts, dining with her, dancing with her at Tramp, or going on to have sex with her in a bedroom in a house in Belgravia.
I can absolutely categorically tell you it never happened.
The pressure on Andrew has continued to build. Virginia Giuffre died by suicide earlier this year. Her posthumous autobiography contained further damaging allegations. Emails have surfaced indicating Andrew's contact with Epstein lasted longer than he'd previously admitted to. And in Washington, lawmakers wanting to expose Epstein's crimes want to speak to the prince. Meanwhile, more questions have been asked about associations with businessmen, including the alleged Chinese spy Yang Tengbo, now banned from the UK. And then there's Royal Lodge, his and his ex-wife's home for over 20 years. There have been increasing calls by MPs to grill the prince on exactly how much he's paid the Crown estate to live there. No longer able to style himself Duke, his membership of the Order of the Garter, the ancient order of chivalry, now dormant. A space in St George's Chapel where his coat of arms used to be. His inability to maintain a low profile at the few family events he was invited to attend cannot have helped family relations. For the King and Prince William, the Andrew problem has proved difficult to resolve. Sarah Campbell, BBC News.
Rachel Maskell, independent MP for York Central, represents constituents who no longer want the city of York associated with Prince Andrew. She gave us her reaction.
During the week, as the story was unfolding, not least the scenes we saw in Lichfield, that something had to be done. And with me publishing my bill, the Removal of Titles Bill, on Monday, it all feels absolutely right and timely that since we saw the publication of Virginia Giuffre's book outlining the allegations around Andrew Windsor, then clearly it was right that action was taken by the Palace. I understand there has to be a process in Parliament, which is what my bill will achieve, the Removal of Titles Bill, to take those titles. I suggest 3 routes by which that can be done, but to give the King ultimate powers in order to take those titles would be a crucial element of that. So I trust that this will lead a pathway for the King to be able to enact this process he has put in train this evening to take those titles. And then, of course, there are issues around the property which will need to be addressed as well. So no longer at the Grace and Favour home on the Windsor estate.
Rachel Maskell, MP for York there. Well, Andrew Lowney is British historian and author of entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York. He told the BBC he doesn't think that this will be the end of the story.
Well, I mean, I'm very much with Jack. I mean, they're finally getting ahead of the story. I don't think it's the end of it. I think there are many more disclosures to come, but at least they're taking some decisive action. And I think that's good. I'm not sure it will completely satisfy the public disquiet, but it's at least something. I do think that there are grounds for Andrew to be investigated and, if necessary, charged on a whole variety of things, ranging from misconduct in public office to some of the sexual trafficking rules. So I don't think it's all over for him, but at least the Palace seem to be getting ahead of the story rather than reacting to it.
The author and historian Sir Anthony Selden reflected earlier on what these developments mean for pressure on the royal family.
And so there may well be more emails, may well be more sordid, horrible, revolting stories to come out, but they are on Andrew. They're not on the royal family. So I'm sure, look, there are many people who wish the royal family ill, but I think the great majority of people, my sense, will feel that the king, the monarch, has done as much as it could have done. And I agree with Jenny. I mean, it is a massively decisive step. Jenny was reference there, the death of Diana. In some ways, you go back to the abdication, or indeed back to 1917, the last time that princes had their titles stripped from them for misbehaviour. In that case, it was fighting on the German side in the First World War. So we haven't seen something like this for 100 years. It is a huge moment in the royal family, but I think it will be a turning point.
That's historian Sir Anthony Selden there. Well, it has been an evening of fast-moving events on this story, so let us just take a moment or two to recap what happened as the evening began, as we got that statement from Buckingham Palace, where they announced that Prince Andrew will lose his titles and move out of Royal Lodge. Andrew is understood not to have objected to the King's decision. We will have all the analysis still across the evening here on the BBC News channel in the UK and around the world. But let us just take a moment to go through that statement from Buckingham Palace in full. It reads, His Majesty has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles and honours of Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew will now be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. It goes on, his lease on Royal Lodge has to date provided him with legal protection to continue in residence. Formal notice has now been served to surrender the lease and he will move to alternative private accommodation. These censures are deemed necessary, it says, notwithstanding the fact that he continues to deny the allegations against him. And it concludes, Their Majesties wish to make clear that their thoughts and utmost sympathies have been and will remain with the victims and survivors of any and all forms of abuse. An extraordinary fall from grace for Prince Andrew, who has faced years of legal woes, of course, over his association with the convicted sex offender, Jeffrey Epstein, and also intensified during the publication of the posthumous memoir of Virginia Giuffre. Let us look at the geography of Andrew's changing living arrangements. He is currently living here in Royal Lodge, part of the Crown Estate in Windsor, west of London. He will be moving to a property owned by his brother, the King, in Sandringham, Norfolk. That is 140 miles, about close to 200 kilometres away. Andrew gave up his other royal titles earlier this month, including the Duke of York, after more questions about his private life. There has, as we've been saying, been increased focus on the Prince over his links with Jeffrey Epstein, and the Prince has always denied any wrongdoing. And as I mentioned, in a posthumous memoir, Virginia Giuffre repeated allegations that as a teenager she had sex with Prince Andrew on 3 separate occasions. Andrew has always denied the claims. Also this month, emails from 2011 re-emerged, showing Andrew in contact with Jeffrey Epstein months after he claimed their friendship ended. Here is the statement from the family of Virginia Roberts Giuffre regarding Prince Andrew and his stripping of the titles. Today, an ordinary American girl from an ordinary American family, they say, brought down a British prince with her truth and extraordinary courage. Virginia Roberts Giuffre, our sister, a child when she was sexually assaulted by Andrew, never stopped fighting for accountability for what had happened to her and to countless other survivors like her. Today, she declares victory. We, her family, along with her survivor sisters, continue Virginia's battle and will not rest until the same accountability applies to all of the abusers and abettors connected to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, Skye and Amanda Roberts, Daniel and Lynette Wilson. Well, you heard there Skye Roberts, Virginia Giuffre's brother. Skye Roberts will now be speaking to BBC Newsnight. This the scene live outside Royal Lodge as we leave this story and join...
In a strongly worded statement from Buckingham Palace, it's been announced Prince Andrew will be stripped of all his titles and honours. He'll simply be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. His fall from grace is now complete, and he must leave his home at Royal Lodge in Berkshire. This is the full statement issued in the last few hours by Buckingham Palace. His Majesty has today